Today I'm lucky enough to be with Faye Wasdell and Kathy Proctor from Ascot Women's Hockey Club. Faye was the second president of the club and Kathy was the third president. Welcome ladies. Faye, I'd like to start with you. How and when was Ascot Women's Hockey Club formed?
Ascot Hockey Club was formed by Eileen Greeley. She was the first president, coach and mentor of everybody in the club. Eileen coached hockey at Ascot School, Ascot State School and Breakfast Creek School, and when the girls left primary school they wanted to form a club, and so Eileen did just that, and the head teacher of Ascot School, Bob Busch, became their patron and remained the patron for the rest of his life.
Faye, can you tell us a bit more about the first president, Eileen Greeley?
Eileen was a Division 1 player and she played for a club called Neptunes, and Neptunes went out of existence and that's when Ascot was formed. Eileen was big in Brisbane hockey. She was a life member of Brisbane and she was also a life member, of course, of Ascot.
Okay, so Faye, can you tell us about the first teams and the uniforms that the club wore?
The first teams, we had 2 junior teams and a B grade team, and the uniforms we wore, I can hold those up for you, Faye, were 3 box pleat with what we call the pyjama cord tie and a white blouse, and all clubs in Brisbane at that stage wore this sort of uniform.
So what's the next uniform that we have here?
This was our second uniform, and it was a blouse with no sleeves and the skirt here. Oh, Kathy's got the skirt there. And the big thing about this was that we had no sleeves, and I was told by an official of Queensland men's hockey, who did we think we were? Australian ruled footballers. But now look what the girls wear now.
So when was that uniform introduced to the club?
That uniform was after we became a bigger club. We started growing, we moved into First Division. So from the mid-60s through to the mid to early 70s, we wore that style of uniform. They'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that development as we got into First Division, because it was a major achievement for us in about 1964, 65, wasn't it, Faye?
It only took us 4 years to get into Division 1, which was pretty good. And we have continued into Division 1 up until today. 10 years after we started, we had our first Queensland reps. 4 girls were Queensland reps after 10 years, which was pretty good.
And now moving on to the next uniform. Kathy, can you tell us about this era of the uniform?
Era is probably quite right, because as you move into uniforms, let me tell you that this is probably the least liked uniform in the whole club history. It was the beginning of the age of going into nylons and synthetics, so we went from the beautiful cotton uniforms through to synthetics, and while this uniform is here, and it was through the 70s, it certainly wasn't one of the most liked uniforms that we ever had. We then moved on to a much smarter during the later part of the 70s era. We moved through back into cotton, but into a full red uniform. During this period we had outstanding success in Division 1, as well as had intermittent juniors throughout that period. That was a period where I joined as a junior and played with Faye's daughters, and we had quite a successful time during that. We had, to my knowledge, our first Australian representative and Nola Driver come through during that period, which was a great milestone for our club.
And our next uniform is from the 80s, and Faye, you designed this uniform for the hockey club.
I did design it, and we actually had them made by a dressmaker, and it was always my dream to have a full colour uniform for the club. And I do know that the first year we had it, we won the March Past, so it proved to be a great success.
And has the club always predominantly been red, navy and white?
Right from the word go, we have, and it is based on the Ascot Primary School club colours, and they still wear that tunic today. It's still part of their uniform, and we took that over and have always incorporated those colours. We came through and we decided to get right into the 90s, and with the new TV uniforms, and we were the first team in Brisbane to have a bodysuit in which these were the skirts that went with it. So you can see we went into being quite out there, and it was a novel introduction to the bodysuits. We then moved to the current uniforms, which are a much more body-hugging, lycra version, and the lycra version of the uniforms with a skirt over them. These uniforms now, again, we're ready to change into a new uniform next year, and most other teams went through having bodysuits. Some still retain them, but many are moving into a lycra style, close fitting, but in a skirt and top for ease of use and wear. So hopefully next year you'll see Ascot in a new uniform, same colours, same sort of scheme, but something modern for the girls to feel good in, be able to play great hockey.
Okay, so the club at the moment is in a bit of a rebuilding stage. You've got 4 turf division teams, 3 grass teams and 1 masters teams. What's the next step for Ascot Women's Hockey Club, and where has its past come from through the succession of those grades?
Probably as Faye said, because we are based out of a school, and like many clubs at that stage, we trained all at Downey Park at different times. Many clubs trained there, and then they slowly diversified. Some linked up with men's clubs and became based at the different venues. And Ascot, along with clubs like St Andrews, have really maintained not a nomadic lifestyle, but certainly haven't had a home ground, or we've used Downey Park as our base. Later in the 90s, Ascot saw a great need to develop a strong junior club, and we moved out to Arana League Club, and they gave us a great amount of support and direction and a facility to train at. We owe a great deal to the Arana Leagues Club for the support they gave to us in those initial years. So in 1994, myself and a number of other ladies set up the Arana Ascot Hockey Club. We had the joint name so that we could utilise the juniors through to our senior club. The club in that first year in 1994 won the best club in BWHA, Best Junior Club, and we also won the Team of the Year with our under 11 team. So it was an outstanding success that year, and we still have those juniors coming through and have been such a bonus to our club all the way through. But at the moment, as I said, we need to rebuild, we need a little bit more structure. Our senior club has struggled in the last couple of years at the top level, although our other teams have been very successful. So it really is changing with the age. The age of hockey is very dynamic, and we need to ensure that our first division has the right coaching staff, the right number of juniors coming through, and all that needs to happen for the team to be successful. We had, as we did in the 80s phase, you'd remember, we had a very successful team in the late 70s. We lost half of that team to women, as they do, had children, their life happened, and the same thing happened to Ascot, where 5 years ago we were often in the top 5 and playing in semi-finals in Division 1. We had that turnover of those important players, and now we have to get that bulk and that centre of our team back again, and that only comes with experience and time. So I believe that the coach this year is doing an outstanding job and creating that core that we're looking to develop, and so we're hoping in the next 2 years that they'll be back in that top 5 area.
Now, we've brought in these 2 trophies from the club. Can you please tell us a little bit about both of them?
Right, the Busch Memorial Trophy, as I said before, Bob Busch was the head teacher of Ascot State School and also the patron of the club and really supported the girls. And when he died, Eileen Greeley thought it would be a lovely gesture to make a trophy to his memory, and as it's called the Busch Memorial Trophy, and it was given to the person in the club who upheld the standards of the club in every way possible and worked for the club in every way possible in that current year. And it was first awarded in 1964, and it's been going strong ever since then.
Now, Faye, what is the other trophy you brought in today?
The other trophy is the Supporters Trophy, and it was instigated by a Division 1 coach of ours, Norm Maddock, and it was first given in 1976, and it's still in existence now, awarded every year at the Ascot Trophy Night, and it's been won by some very interesting people and very good players.
And some people in this room today have won the Busch Memorial Cup before.
I think both of us. Faye, you were the first.
I was the first.
And I've won it myself, and even our interviewer today, Catherine, has also won it. So I think Catherine and I may be the first mother and daughter that have won the trophy. So that's an outstanding achievement as well.
Now, Catherine, Faye, can you please tell us about the future of the club, where it's going with the juniors and the seniors, and without a clubhouse or a facility for the club, what is going to attract people to the club in the future years?
Well, I believe that the backbone of any club are the juniors, and as long as the club continues to work in that area and continues to attract juniors through Rana Hills and anywhere else they can attract them from, that is the most important thing. And as far as having a clubhouse goes, well, it's never been important in the past, and I don't see what great advantage it would be to us in the future.
And I have to agree with that in a lot of respects. While I understand there are some very big clubs in Brisbane that do have clubhouses, they also have their drawbacks as well. They're a facility that you have to maintain. Most of the high-level hockey is now played on turf, and not every club can afford a turf, and you wouldn't want every club to have a turf in Brisbane. So having a clubhouse isn't necessarily the be-all and end-all. What is important is that we get our structure right, that our administration is right, and people want to come and play for the club. We've had very much a family history. We still have some old girls groups that we email and talk to. Faye's very involved in organising that. And we want to continue that ethos of the club about having fun and enjoying hockey for what it is. You know, we want to be competitive, we want to go out there and do our best, but when it all boils down, it's a game of hockey. You want to meet friends, you want to have a great time, and you want to be able to come off at the end of the day and say, well, that was great, I want to come back next week. I can still remember myself, my very first game of hockey with Ascot. My sisters played, really keen to play. Finally had my first game, and truly, I can't tell you, I don't want to embarrass Faye too much, but I remember our score was something like 24-0. We lost, and I walked off the field, and I remember clearly saying, I love this game, I never want to stop playing. And that's what we want anybody that plays the game to think about. So hopefully we have a future, a strong future, but it doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles. It just has to have people that want to play the game. So hopefully they will.
Faye and Kath, as a proud Orana Ascot and Ascot person myself, thank you very much for your time today, and we wish the club all the best for the future.
Thank you.
Pleasure.